What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and what you should be looking out for the future. I'm also going to break down what's going on with the overall market and how this may affect Tesla, what the news, data, and technicals are telling us about both Tesla and the markets, and how this may affect Tesla's share price for tomorrow as I give you guys my price prediction. Now, before I break anything down about this though, before I get into any more details, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 7 free stocks, and 5 out of those 7 free stocks could be a free Tesla share. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends in just 8 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Tesla was up 0.56% for the day, and in my previous video, I told you guys that Tesla would most likely see a nice pop into open, followed by a big sell-off as the day went on, and we would have actually closed red if it wasn't for Janet Yellen and the perpetual manipulation that continues in the market near the end of the day. I'm going to actually show you what this manipulation was and why Janet Yellen did play a bit of a role. But firstly, in the video I told you Tesla would pop then drop, and that is what ended up happening. Now I can't always predict the market perfectly. I'm not like some sort of fortune teller or Nostradamus or anything like that. But I do want to note that given the patterns we're seeing in the markets, there are many instances where we can get good insights on what's likely going to come. And even though, once again, nobody could always be perfect when doing this, so please don't throw stones at me during the instances where I am incorrect. Sometimes it happens, but I just want to note that the majority of the time, I could give you guys very good insights based off historical data, and this is actually going to help us figure out what could end up playing out very soon for Tesla too. And that's why I want to break this down for you guys. But what actually happened? Why did Tesla prop up in the very beginning? Well, this was actually a big bull trap that ended up playing out. A lot of bulls got trapped into buying calls, thinking the market was just about to rip. And you have to remember the things that Jerome Powell said. He said the Fed is going to continue to tighten. Inflation is still way too high. We're going to see tightening in the credit markets and the real estate markets and all over the USA. He also mentioned the fact that the Fed is not cutting rates this year. They're going to be planning on cutting rates for 2024. So there's no good reason for the market to rally super, super hard during a day like this. And the market still actually did that in the very beginning. That's why this was a bull trap. It was just tricking so many people, and the bears took advantage of this. This was also allowed by the bears so that they could actually reestablish their positions in much better entries. It's all just part of a game. So then they come out, they smack the market down. This actually drags down Tesla. Tesla ends up tanking to 188. And I told you all, this is where Tesla's gap support is. I told you that if Tesla came down to 188, that's where we're going to try to hold. But if we break below it, there's this gap right here that starts at about 188, and Tesla would likely come all the way down to fill the gap around 183 into the low 180s if we broke below 188 in a very strong manner without getting a bounce during that time. Instead, we ended up bouncing off 188 because of Janet Yellen and also because of market makers. You see, when you look at Max Payne for today on SPY was 394. The market makers were trying to get us to close to 394. So why is that? And I'm not really going to try to be the person to bring up conspiracy theories or things like that, but here's what's going on. And here's what I think happened. The market was set to sell off pretty hard. We saw some bulls come out and defend, this 390 area that played somewhat of a role, but then the market got this nice push up because Janet Yellen came out and she happened to be helping them out. Now, I don't think Janet Yellen intentionally did this, but the market makers used her words as an excuse. I also had no idea that Janet Yellen would be speaking again today near the very end of the day. I didn't really expect it, but she came out and she just repeated a lot of things that she said from yesterday. She said that right now the USA is prepared to help, support the banks and even bail them out if they have to for the betterment of the USA. She also reiterated that the US needs to excuse me, continued to raise its debt ceiling. So all of these things were just reiterated. She repeated all these things again, and yet the market continued to rally off of it. That's why we got this nice push up at the end of the day. It actually happened very fast. SPY went from 390 all the way up to 395. And the market, because we're trying to get us to close around 394 or somewhere very close to it. And they actually came a little bit short, which tells us right now there's quite a bit of weakness in the markets. Now, in the hourly time frame, SPY is looking more in favor of the bears. We have a very bearish looking trend that's developing, and now we're going to be fighting for 390 very soon. Also, when you look at the VIX right now had a crazy day. This thing pushed up very hard, then came down at the very end. We're only up 1.5% for the day. In my opinion, the VIX is most likely going to end up getting dragged up all the way up to about 30 very soon over the next few weeks, quite easily. And I think that's most likely going to happen because of the market continuing to slide. Now, what else I want to add to this is the fact that when it comes to Tesla, Tesla was also pushing up in a very suspicious way in the morning because it was getting hit with some very negative news, and yet it continued to hold up in the very beginning. I found that very suspicious, and I do believe the news cycle is starting to shift against Tesla as more bad news is starting to come out. And the first bad piece of news that could actually negatively affect the share price just came out a couple of minutes ago. That's the fact that Tesla's cybersecurity measures ended up failing because hackers won control over a Model 3 during a hacking event. That is not a good sign for any company, especially Tesla. And what they found is the fact that when you consider the fact that these Teslas are using integrated software, they're used in everyday life for millions and millions of their employees, their people, their buyers. And the problem is now it's been found that there are hackers out there that are capable of actually hacking into their systems. And by doing so, they can actually access confidential information and other things like that. That is not good news whatsoever for any company to hear about this. Now, I also want to note the fact that this was not necessarily performed in a way where a lot of this came out publicly. I think they were trying to avoid lots of public scrutiny in the process. But once again, I don't consider this good news. I think that there has to be a lot more work to be done to avoid things like this, especially from the cybersecurity side and the software development side. And on top of that, another negative piece of news came out that says Tesla expects to lose the full $7,500 tax credit on its cheapest electric cars. It's not just one of them, but it's many of them, possibly. And what's basically going on is the fact that Tesla's batteries come from China. And the new laws, the new updates to the federal tax credit are actually not going to include electric cars that have batteries that come from China. They expect them to come from North America, unfortunately. And you can add a lot of scrutiny to many different companies out there, many different uh, uh, regulators out there for making laws like this. You can do whatever you want, but at the end of the day, this will negatively affect Tesla. Unfortunately, it does actually de-incentivize people to actually buy more Teslas. It's not really good news, but it's not the end of the world, because I also want to add to the fact that yes, this could be going on, but once again, when there is noise that comes out because of this, there could be a big reaction. The one thing that is making many Tesla investors a little bit concerned would be the tensions between the US and China right now. I really hope this does not affect the Giga Shanghai, but as of right now, things are still okay. Now, this is just the bad news. I want to talk about some good news too for all Tesla investors. As I mentioned earlier, Tesla is set to break another record in China for the quarterly deliveries. And I believe they're going to continue to just kill it in China over and over again. In Europe, deliveries are doing very well, and also in the US, deliveries have been absolutely incredible. But now that right now we're about to see Tesla lose or possibly lose the EV tax credit, I believe that there's a chance that a lot of people are going to start buying Tesla for the remainder of the next week, and they may see a big shift in spending very soon. We're starting to see the inventory levels go up. I don't know if this is related to the new rules that came out, but these do tend to get bought up very soon. I'm hoping that that happens at least for the next week. But regardless of all of this, I'm still very confident Tesla's going to have a very strong amount of deliveries to come out for their next deliveries report. So by the time April starts, there's a good chance Tesla might see a nice increase in the share price if they do very well on deliveries. All right. So I know I'm talking about downside for Tesla. I do think there could be more downside for another week, but there is a chance that if we get a very strong deliveries report, Tesla could get a nice bounce later on into April, early April. And also, earnings is coming out a little bit later too. That's going to be important. We'll just have to wait and see on that. But now, when it comes to the technical details, I want to just note that volume was 143 million, quite lower than the average volume, which means Tesla is not necessarily getting pumped up like before. We need lots of volume if we want to see this thing continue to push very hard. We're not really getting it. We're actually pumping on low volume, which tends to be either because of manipulation, not a whole lot of buying, short covering, and many different factors like that. Now, the short volume did increase like crazy yesterday. We saw a lot of shorting on Tesla, lots of shorts piled in, lots of selling pressure came because of the FOMC meeting at the end of the day. And I want to note that with these high trends like this could also shift the share price negatively. Looking at the price pairs ratio right over here, if Tesla does end up sliding over the next week, this will likely start to decrease because Tesla has a tendency of reacting more with a lot more volatility compared to the markets. If that ends up playing out, please be very ready for the share price to slide a bit. Now, besides that, there's not a whole lot else to say except for the fact that on Fridays, Tesla's green only 48% of the time. We do tend to slow down on Fridays, and we also tend to get lots of volume by the fourth hour of the day. So the odds do favor some downside to come. The short interest has been increasing. We actually saw over 25 million shares shorted just 2 days ago. So we're starting to see more shorts piling into Tesla. Be very careful during times like this. I also find it very interesting how when lots of shorts start piling in, this is the same time in which lots of bad pieces of news happen to come out. It's almost as if these things are related. Once again, I'm not going into like the route of conspiracy theories or things like that. But when it comes to Tesla, what am I seeing for the share price right now? I just want to note that for SPY, because we actually pushed up into open, there's a good chance we might actually slow down a little bit into the first couple of hours of the day, first couple of minutes at least, because of the fact that Bullard is speaking and he does have a tendency of being quite hawkish. So I do think SPY is going to come down to retest this 390 area. We might see bulls step in and try to fight. We might try to get an intraday bounce. And overall, I do see us trading sideways for most of the day, but then I do see a sell off coming, and I think SPY is most likely going to end up testing 388. Now, 388.56 is going to be the specific level to watch. We might try to bounce off of it at least here and there, but overall, the odds are favoring a bit of a red day for tomorrow. The VIX did not end up closing up over 10%. It was up like 10% at one point, but I do believe that the VIX once again is looking bullish. It looks like it's forming a base around this 20 area. It's going to keep on pushing up. It's going to most likely get dragged up very soon because the market will likely see downside. Now, for Amazon, I want to note that this thing might try to get a back test of 100, but overall, it looks like it's in a topping process and it's going to likely continue to slow down as the MACD is continuing to flatten and slow down too. Now, even if the market tries to hold up tomorrow, just hypothetically, I would just want to note that I don't think that the market's going to hold these levels for too much longer. And downside does seem to be in favor right now because the bears are getting a lot stronger. And because of the fact that the biggest piece of news, which was FOMC, came out, and that's the bigger factor that's going to likely lead to more selling pressure. Looking at something like I don't know, Neo is also looking a little bit more bearish in my opinion. As long as it doesn't break 9.52, it's most likely going to get dragged down to fill this gap around the 8.7 zone. But if it does break 9.52 because of a good piece of news, that could change. But so far, it failed to do that. So the odds do favor it eventually coming down, maybe going into next week more. For NVIDIA, I just want to note that this thing looks like it's been forming a top around this 275 area. We're starting to see a lot of shorts piling into it, and this could actually work in either direction. But I do believe that the odds are favoring this thing slowing down a bit and starting to come all the way down to this 266 area. And if that doesn't hold, then there's like the 264 followed by 260. I do believe it's going to most likely start to retest a lot of these levels, and I do believe the odds are favoring downside going into the future. For Apple's now holding a very important support zone, which is 157.5. I believe Apple is going to continue to try to hold this level. It might even try to bounce off of it, but overall, this trend looks like it's starting to actually curl. We look like we're going to be entering a distribution schematic, which tells me that Apple is once again sliding, and we might actually break below this support very soon. If we break below it, make sure you watch the 155 zone on Apple because that's going to be very important and that could drag the market down more, especially going into next week. The triple Q was up about 1.19%, but it was actually trading kind of sideways for the majority of the day. Did not really push up too hard. I just want to note that first we got the push up, we came down, not a whole lot of price action right here. We did close around resistance around 310, and we're likely going to see this thing get dragged down a little bit over the next couple of days. I do believe it's going to get a back test of about 306 again. So make sure you're very careful here. And finally, I'm just going to end the video with the dollar and then Tesla. The dollar bounced off 102. Also, that 102.5 area is important. We closed above it, which tells me the dollar is most likely going to try to continue to uptrend. This likely happens because of financial conditions tightening and also because of the Fed. So we might see the dollar try to bounce off of this level. If it bounces and starts pushing up even more, that's going to be bearish for the stock market. So finally, to end the video, what's going on with Tesla? If you're bullish on Tesla, if you think Tesla's going to try to get a bounce, you have to watch 195. If it breaks 195, then 200 is technically possible, but we have some major resistance between 198.5 to 200, the zone around there. So any levels between that tend to be hit with some major resistance. And I don't really see Tesla breaking this unless there's a huge piece of news, but I'm just not seeing it right now. If anything, the news cycle has been actually negatively affecting Tesla, and it may continue to do that. Now, if you're bearish on Tesla, you're going to be watching 190 and then 188. If it fails at 188, there's a good chance it's going to come all the way down to about 186, 185, 186, where the 200 EMA is on the daily or the hourly. Sorry, and it's most likely going to end up failing. If it doesn't necessarily get a bounce there, it's going to most likely fill the gap around the low 180s. And it's going to most likely continue to fall from there. So what do I think is going to happen? My best prediction is going to be Tesla is likely going to sell off near the opening hours of the day because we did actually reject off the 200 EMA on the 5-minute time frame. I think Tesla's going to likely sell off in the morning because of Bullard. I think he's most likely going to drag the market down. It's going to retest this 188 and maybe try to bounce off of it. I don't know if we're going to try to get to like 195 or something like that. But I do think the odds favor that if Tesla breaks 188, we're going to come all the way down into the lower 180s. I think that's very possible to happen tomorrow. If it doesn't happen tomorrow, it's most likely going to happen early next week. But the odds are still favoring downside on Tesla for now. And I do think we're likely going to see Tesla close kind of red, maybe very close to 190, if not even lower if we break below 188. And if it breaks it once again, expect this thing to come down pretty hard if that ends up happening, unfortunately. All right, so this is what this is looking like on the hourly. This looks very distributive once again. I don't know if we're going to get dragged down into open because of Bullard and try to get one last backtest of 195 before dropping. Even if it does try to bounce, we're most likely going to end up failing. And the odds favor us eventually coming down to fill this gap all the way down around this 183 level. This could be forming over the next couple of trading days, if not tomorrow, if we fell at 188. I want to warn everyone about that. And once again, what I'm thinking is a sell-off in the morning thanks to Bullard, a nice bounce intraday. Not too sure how high Tesla will get. We could try to get somewhere in the 190s, followed by another rejection and a bit of a sell-off as the day goes on, and a retest of 188. If it fails, we're most likely going to start filling this gap. And we're most likely going to end up, once again, dropping. Finally, I just want to note that from a bigger standpoint, we could be forming a head and shoulders right here. Right here. This could be like a head, and then this could be our left shoulder. There's a good chance that if Tesla does end up filling this gap, it might come all the way down to this 177, 176 area, then start bouncing and trading sideways for the time being, maybe get dragged one last time before getting a big reaction to deliveries coming out in early April. But overall, like I said, the structure looks more bearish, the trend looks more bearish, the odds are now favoring Tesla coming down eventually, whether it's on Friday or going into early next week. With that said, thank you all so much for listening. Please have an absolutely incredible rest of the day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Tesla to the moon because the long-term future is still incredibly bright, and peace out.